there, everybody. Welcome to BETJ's My Two Cents. I'm Jennifer Lewis Hall, and joining me are my co-hosts, Stacey Ann Chin and Breon Bain. Our special guest this session is Dell. She only needs one word, one name. Dell, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You are a comedian. We expect to talk about, I guess, some things that we can laugh at and some things that we can't. I mean, this time I thought this was an interesting question. Is it okay to give each other a pass to talk about some things, a racial pass that we can say, but perhaps some other races and cultures can't? And what about us degrading us? What about that, especially when it comes to comedy and the speech that we use?
When we're talking about the N-word, it has in the past been more acceptable because it is a way that we relate it. It's more like how we said it. I think that we have not accepted other races saying it, or we have not accepted the white race saying it, because when you're born in America, everybody's, racist, really. When you're born in America, you just, there is a barrier between white and blacks because we are, we come from slavery.
It's not just America, though. Yeah, it's in a bunch of other countries. Racism is global. Let's lay that down. I'm Jamaican. I've been to South Africa. Racism is pretty global.
Racism definitely is a worldwide thing, but in America, I think we focus mainly on the differences between white and black. As a black American, we will focus on racism from white people here and white Americans because we are still striving in this country and we are remembering more of our struggles to become a part of a normal society.
But is it okay? Is it okay to say things that other people can't if you say them to yourself? I mean, I have a problem with that.
I mean, I think about this kind of with two different ways, right? On the one hand, like when I think about comedians, we're speaking English, the English tradition, like going back to England and the monarchy, the kingdom, the court gesture being sort of like the precursor to the comedian, right?
Right.
And the court gesture was the person who was closest to the king, right? And so had the person
could say things.
And could say things
nobody else could say.
Nobody else could say, right? And so, in a certain sense, I feel like that role in the society allowed for a person who could speak the truth of the society that no one else gave voice to. So when I hear Michael Richards using certain language, I feel like that's not just an anomaly, that's a reflection of the deep roots of the society.
Which takes us to the issue that that the language we use and how we speak to each other, I think that we often begin that conversation and begin talking about, you shouldn't say the N-word and you shouldn't say, what Ima said and you shouldn't say all that stuff. But I think that we often leave it there, and the problem is not in what we say, but why we say it.
The whole idea we're caught up in the words and not dealing with the fundamental system and the society that treats us in this way still is a problem for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're still being treated this way.
But why would you call yourself, whatever society says, why would you call yourself
focusing on the symptoms and not the underlying
that
disease,
is not indicative of
White
who you
supremacy
really are?
is a disease, and society is disease.
Let me comment on a couple of things you said. First of all, let me tell you, the word comes from the word nekra, which is people, which means black, and white people were using that word because they were ignorant and could not pronounce nekra. That's how you get nigger. Okay,
no,
and
but some people, but there are other histories that say the word comes from the word Niger, which is a mispronunciation of the word Niger.
So that's depending on your research.
Theories.
So
none of them
now that the word has been in our society and it has been used against the black race as a way to degrade, we have. I don't know how we adopted the word, but we have adopted the word, and it is that we accept the actions.
What do you mean you don't know how we've adopted the word? It's the same way lesbians have adopted the word dyke. Now we don't mind being called dykes, but dykes over 60 mind being called dykes.
Every oppressed group.
That's the way language changes over time.
Every oppressed group has
I'm not advocating for the use of the word. I am saying I don't think the problem is the use of the word. The problem is how the people who we call, what kinds of lives do they lead, and therefore what kinds of rooms do they live in?
Do you use this word, any of these words that we are really talking about in a grand sphere in your comedy?
Using the word.
So did you used to use it?
Oh, and I have definitely used
Why
the word.
did you stop using it?
And it's because in my growth, I have realized that we are using that word to dehumanize ourselves, and therefore you have the black men who are using that word. If that's your nigga, or you calling somebody your nigga, That's what allows black men to pick up a gun and kill each other because it's a nigger.
So not true.
I don't think so.
The reason black men pick up guns is because there are no other jobs for them in this society.
There are other jobs. We've got to be creative.
We've got to be innovative. For those boys?
Listen, we've got to be innovative. If there are no jobs, create the jobs. There are a lot of
jobs as in who, Bush? Come on.
Our culture is popular culture. So like everybody sees into our culture because our culture is sold and bought like we were sold and bought. You know what I'm saying? So that's the difference. Is our internal dialogue is really an external dialogue that everybody is privy to and then thinks that they can then take that and use it appropriate as if it's their own.
Just because something is I always kind of say like we look through different eyes. By the time you become 30 and 40, you look through different eyes. I'm talking about if popular culture also means the trend, that most important trend is youth. That's going to be anyone from the age of 10 to 20. You better think about what you say because the images that they form in their minds are not as concise and clear and historical as that which I think we all see and know right now. And I do have a problem with it because I think that we internalize the negative side of that. While it may be a congenial thing to say, I think people better look back at their history. And if they know the history, say what you will. That's my point. So we're going to continue this dialogue and we'll get a chance to figure out whether this is really laughable or funny at all. We'll be right back.
I'm cheap. And I've always been cheap. I've always been that way, but it's not my fault, right? I get that from my parents, just cheap for no reason. And, as soon as we complain, my mother, she grew up on a farm in South Carolina. She talking about, y'all don't know how good y'all got it. Because, it's a cultural divide there, which is it's hard to cross sometimes, like they grew up in another world. Like my grandfather, he was a policeman in the 60s back in South Carolina, which was like, that was unheard of, for a black man back in those days. He didn't have a gun or anything, just a walkie-talkie. It was in case of emergency, call white cops. You take what you can get, It's baby steps.
Welcome back to BETJ's My Two Cents. I'm Jennifer Lewis Hall and my co-hosts once again, Stacey Ann Chin and Breon Bain. Welcome back, everybody. Our special guest for this segment is going to be Reese Waters from DC.
That's right.
So I understand that you perform right here in the Big Apple as well.
That's right.
So welcome. We are talking about, this is a hot show today. We are talking about banned speech, comedians, and we branched out to some other areas too, which we sometimes do. This time around, is it okay to, in the hip hop community, for our kids to listen to some of the lyrics? What about, for example, little girls listening or reciting even Little Kim lyrics? What's your take on this, and where do you go in terms of free speech?
Well, I think that's pretty impressive if they can figure out what in the world Lil Kim is saying, because I have a hard time with it myself. But, I have a hard time actually blaming hip hop itself because, I can't really tell somebody else how or how not to make their money. Where I would say the blame lies, as far as I'm concerned, are the companies who really, there's positive hip hop as well. There's hip hop where these words aren't being said as well. However, they put their money and they put their promotion behind, the Little Kims of the world who are saying things that we don't necessarily want our youngsters to hear. I would put some of the responsibility on them. I would put also some of the responsibility on the parents and on the social systems that we have at play, because I think that form is always going to exist. It's always going to exist. There's always going to be, forums where things are said and done that we don't necessarily want our kids exposed to, and I can't really say, I'm upset with you because of how you make your money. I think more of the responsibility lies upon the parents to really dictate to their kids what they should and shouldn't be exposed to. Now, obviously, there's limits to that. They do go to school.